Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. Welcome to this impromptu live stream of what I guess we could call a shakedown run of ASR's newly updated for the second time this week, 1991 Williams FW14. It's pretty weird that ASR would issue two updates to the same car in the same week. However, I think most of us can agree that version 0.5 beta missed the mark quite a bit. We did not like the sounds at all. There were basically no upshift sounds, and some of the external engine sounds didn't sound all that great either. So ASR apparently saw that and have corrected their errors here in version 0.6, much to all of our glorious splendor in the great pleasure that we take in that update. Yes, I did not prepare that line at all, and it definitely shows. But here it is, 0.6 beta of the FW14. Now, I don't want to do a traditional review of this in the long form that you're used to seeing, because I've already reviewed this car a couple of times, and the last time I did it was version 0.3, I believe it was, and it was somewhat recent, so I don't want to go through the trouble of doing a whole review again, and quite honestly, I think it might be better off just doing a live stream like this. It's a bit more informal, and I think we can still achieve most of the same goals there, minus some of the competition history and all of that stuff, because you guys already know that, because you've already seen the review videos that I have done of the FW14 by ASR. So here we're just really going to drive the car, and I'll do my best to address any questions or any comments that you guys might have for me. Obviously, we're at Spa today, and we're just going to throw the car around and see what it's got. In terms of what we've got going on externally, for the most part, it's the same car that we've seen before, because, well, it is the same car that we've seen before. But for the most part, we have all of our updates going on under the skin here on the FW14. The biggest graphical gremlin that we had on this car was the fact that these little vortex generators on the bottom of the front wing, they would just sort of blend into the tarmac as the download comes onto the car at high speed. The downforce starts to build across the front end of the car, and those little vortex generators on the bottom would just sort of mesh into the tarmac, and it didn't look good at all. ASR have corrected that problem by readjusting how the car sits on its wheels, and the ride height can no longer be adjusted as such to have those little vortex generators going into the tarmac. Other than that, though, basically, it appears as it has been for the last couple of update cycles. The most obvious sign, though, that you would see when those vortex generators were blending into the tarmac would be from this camera angle here, and obviously from the camera on the other side of the car as well. You would just see that from the onboard shots, the little wing elements there going into the tarmac. But we don't have that problem anymore, so I'll stop talking about it now. The cockpit basically is unchanged from what we've seen in the past. Great ASR graphics works inside and out, I must say. The dash display is unchanged in terms of what it's showing us, but it does give us a little bit more legibility. The information, however, is unchanged, so you're already pretty familiar with all of that. Going to the setup screen here, they have changed the car setup, particularly in the suspension and the ride height. So if you do have any leftover setups for the FW14 like I have, they won't work anymore. You'll see here, we'll load this setup. Then immediately, aside from the engine coming on, you see the front ride height there. We're now at -4 millimeters, and the minimum is 20. So the front ride height is now far too low. And if we go outside the car, you might be able to see how that front wing is now just dragging itself along the tarmac, and you can't render it anymore. So it's the front wing is sitting on the ground there, and that obviously is not good for performance. So if we reset to default setup, you see the car comes back up on all four wheels there, which means that you're going to have to redo your setup if you had one, as I did. So I'll have to redo my setup. But for the most part, things are unchanged. You still have all the same setup options as you had previously, so now it's just a question of finding what feels good. For me, really, that only has to do with the ride height. I like a lot of rake in a car, so we'll lower the ride height pretty significantly on the front end. But other than that, that should be all she wrote for setup changes. Everything else feels pretty neutral on this car, as you've seen in the couple of videos that I have featured on it. 0.5 beta had essentially the same physics as 0.6. I did a shakedown run at Mugello in 0.5, and I did basically a qualifying sim at Imola in 0.6 that I released a little bit earlier today, so you know what's what in that regard. However, we'll put some fuel on board, and we'll go out on track here at Spa and just talk about what we're feeling. We'll run the soft tires here, and we'll just keep everything else as is. So in the cockpit here, first gear, careful not to stall it, and off we go. That is very squirrely on the rear, straight out of the box through Eau Rouge. Maybe we need some tire temperature. And you'll also see we're bouncing off the rev limiter in 6th gear. The default gearing is not that great. We're going to have to rectify that. As you can hear, though, the sounds are pretty much unchanged from the previous versions. Very high-pitched yet throaty sound from that Renault RS3 in the back. I will say, though, we do need still a little bit more of a clunk on those upshifts. You don't hear the upshift happen. It almost sounds like it's seamless, and of course in this era there was no such thing as a seamless shift. So that is still something that needs to be corrected, and that gearing is absolutely terrible. We're going to have to fix that right away because I can't put up with that. We're losing about 15 miles an hour at least on the straights because of that gearing. Gechi Teixeira, hola, ¿cómo estás? Yo sé que hablas portugués, pero solo yo hablo español. Alright, back to the pits, and Keishan, I don't know if I'll be doing commentary for the Indy 500 yet. The Indy 500 is obviously a very long race, and I'm not entirely sure what my logistics are going to be that day with work, etc. So I don't know if I'll even be around for the Indy 500, although I really hope that I am, because obviously all of us are waiting with bated breath to see that. Let's see here. We got to change our gearing. Oh yeah, look at how short that gearbox is. It's not so good, is it? Final drive, that brings us up over 200 miles an hour in 6th gear, which is good. How's our gap, though, between gears here with our top speeds? 81 in first, we can live with it. 107 in second, we can lengthen that slightly. One thing I will say about this new version is that your steps between ratios, they're pretty big. So you'll see for second gear we go from 1936 to 2239, which nets a speed difference of 107 miles an hour to 115. Doesn't sound like a lot, but then you look at third gear, and the default here is topping out third gear at 134. So you've got 15, 20 miles an hour between gears there. Still a very close ratioed box, which, yeah, it's what these gearboxes were, but at the same time, I think it does take away some of your flexibility in gearing. You'll see here 5th gear defaults down to the absolute bottom of its range, but then when you start to ramp it up, you go all the way up to 186, and then up to 198, and then 6th gear is at 204. So you do have to play with the gearing just a little bit here to get it right, but yeah, I think that should be pretty reasonable for our purposes here. So we'll see. And yes, I might have to work on Memorial Day weekend. I work at a school for immigrants. I'm an English teacher for new immigrants to the United States, and it's all dependent on what their schedules are. So we schedule our classes whenever they're available. So if they're available on Memorial Day weekend, we'll have classes on Memorial Day weekend. So we will see here. Put some gas in the car once again. And we'll head back out. And gearing should be better. I hope it is at least. Alright, that seems okay. There's a little bit of a drop in 5th gear still. Eau Rouge is not flat yet. Yeah, 5th is a bit too long. Still accelerating here in 6th, but it's pretty sluggish. Yeah, 5th gear is too long, for sure. Can live with it for a little while, I suppose. Also, I haven't taken any wing off the car yet, and obviously at a circuit like Spa, you don't need as much wing as you might think. Right now, I've got no problems through Pouhon whatsoever. Good apex speed, but at the same time, definitely don't need that much grip. Right. A little squirrely there through Stavolo. Yeah, 5th is way too long. What have we got? Back end on this one is a bit more squirrely than it was in some previous versions. Again, I don't know quite yet if that's down to the setup or if they've dialed some more oversteer into the car, but as you can see, Eau Rouge is now a little bit terrifying. I think as it should be in a car this old. Brakes feel good. Initial turn-in is a little sluggish. There is some understeer there. And then you get on the power and you get oversteer immediately. Okay, apex curbs are a little sensitive now. I shouldn't be surprised because that low front wing and the flat bottom, yes, they'll conspire to make things very twitchy if you unsettle the aero balance across the bottom of the car. Alright, two things that I know right away about this setup. 5th gear is too long, and there's too much wing. Also use this opportunity to have a look at the chat. Let's see what we've got going on here. Okay, first off, aero. We can take a lot of wing out of the car straight away. Let's try 10-17. Why not? We're definitely getting a bit of oversteer in high-speed corners. But paradoxically, we've also got understeer on turn-in. Maybe we can free up the diff a little bit. See if that has any effect. Brake bias feels fine. Brake power feels fine. I haven't been locking wheels up, so that's not a problem. We can raise the front ride height a touch. Anti-roll bars. Let's give it a little bit more anti-roll bar on the rear and see what that does. Otherwise, wings and 5th gear. Yeah, and we can shorten 6th gear as well then. And then we'll see, maybe taking the wing out will solve the straight line problems and we can keep the 5th gear ratio where it is. Let's see, the text here, or the chat rather, we're talking about Codemasters. Yes, they have officially announced F1 2017 today, and they've also announced that they're bringing back some classic content, some of which we've seen from them before, namely this car, the Williams FW14, but they're also going to be bringing us, among others, the Ferrari F2002. And I'm not entirely sure if they're not also going to feature the F2004, because, yes, they did show a rendering of the F2002, but they also showed another rendering, which to me looked more like an F2004 than an F2002. The F2002, the nose on it is a little bit more flat, and the F2004 has a bit of a rounder nose to it. So I saw a rounder nose on one of the renderings there in that preview, so I'm not sure if they're bringing us both of those cars. Either that, or they just haven't they haven't done their research in terms of what the F2002 actually looked like. I don't know really, though, what they're going to be doing in terms of other classic content. I know just as much as all of you, obviously. I would love it if they would include some 2005 cars, 2007 cars. I mean, obviously, you have Lewis Hamilton, who has won the World Championship twice in the last 3 years, and I think it'd be cool if you put in an MP422 or an MP423. Many of the drivers who are world champions and are still in Formula One, it'd be really cool if you could put some of their cars, their championship-winning cars, in the game as well. I don't know what they'll do. Typically, I'm not very impressed by Codemasters, mostly because of their physics. As a simmer, I look at Codemasters and I just say, well, it's basically an arcade game. Let's be honest. The physics are not good. The handling dynamics of the cars are not believable. I think the worst offender, though, was F1 2010, where all the cars essentially were the same. It was just a poorly executed game, we'll say that. They have gotten better over the years, but honestly, I have not been a fan of Codemasters ever since they royally screwed up F1 2010, and I still don't think they're there. In any regard, let us see. So we get the gloves back on here. Have our setup changes made the car a bit more enjoyable, because I was feeling okay, a little bit of understeer on turn-in, a little bit of oversteer at high speed, but not enough straight line speed. So we'll see if we fix that. 5th gear definitely is better. How's Eau Rouge? Taking it flat-ish. I took it flat, I didn't stay on line. Tire temperatures will have to come up. Straight line speed is improved massively, over 200 miles an hour now. Just reading the very small speed readout there on the dash. That is understeer city now. Give it a chance to get some tire temperature up. May have taken out a little bit too much front wing. Oh yeah, lots of understeer now. How's Pouhon? That should tell us. Apex speed is lower. Sort of expected, though, I would say. not entirely sure about that understeer. And yeah, I know I just went off there. Trust me, it had nothing to do with my driving. I just noticed a spider that I had to take care of. No humans were harmed in the making of this video. Brakes. Now I'm locking him up. Front end grip is diminished, as you would expect from taking wing off, power sliding in the exit there of the new bus stop. It's been there since 2006. Can we still call it the new bus stop? Really? Alright, Eau Rouge is flat now. It's still very squirrely on the back end. As our turn in into Lecumbe, better. Tire temperatures are now there. Still a bit understeery. Probably trim some more front wing back in. Yeah. High-speed corners, that understeer. Rearing its ugly head. I need some more front wing now. You see, car setup, it's a journey. You make a change, you go out, you see how it feels, you like it, you don't like it, you figure out what the problem could be, you go back and you solve the problem, you go out again, you see if you've actually solved the problem. So, car setup, if you want to do it right, can take you a very long time. And conversely, I feel like 6th gear could be a little bit longer, because we're hitting the limiter a little bit early. Oh, that was a little terrifying. I feel like the car's bottoming a little bit there. I mean, it's almost unavoidable to strike the bottom there on the skid plates through a ruse, such as the compression that you get through the car there at the bottom of the hill. The intelligent question, though, is what are the lap times? Because if the lap times are okay, I can deal with it if the car doesn't feel the best. And it's just a question of getting used to it. Our last lap was 1:58, I want to say. I can barely read the display. I could bring up the actual lap timer when I get a moment. But then again, that would blow this lap. So... the problems continue. In any event, though, I do have to say that versions 0.5 and 0.6, they both feel a lot more lively on the rear end. I almost feel like this car had a little bit too much downforce earlier on, and they have fixed that. This is still the fastest 1991 F1 car that we currently have in AC, but it doesn't feel like it's absolutely glued to the road anymore. To be honest, the older versions of this car almost felt like Formula Hybrid with the amount of grip that they had, particularly at the rear. Now things are a bit better. That was a 1:50.201, so that resets our best lap of the session, and that last lap time that we had on the previous lap was a 1:50 as well. I can't tell the difference between a 0 and an 8 on this display. I mean, I was going to say, a 1:58 is a little bit slow. Six could be a touch longer. Brakes feel okay. And you can see the car is now very lively in that transitional zone between mechanical grip and aero grip. you will get some slides going, particularly if you get on the throttle. Then you can almost drift the thing. What else we got going on here? Haha, yeah. There's the drifting going on in a Formula 1 car. Now I'm just being a little bit silly. Those of you who have seen the review I've done of the FW14 by MSF, I kind of lost my mind a little bit on that one. Yeah, that car is just a lot of fun. And I think I'm still a little giddy from it because I suddenly feel the need to make this Williams slide a bit more. Which I don't think is very productive if we're trying to do something realistic. And you see at low speed there, I just lose it. And make a complete fool of myself, yes. And now I've ripped the diffuser off in two directions. With those very high curbing on the backside there, the curving is very high. And serrated as well, so if you want to destroy a Formula 1 car, just run over the curb a couple times. What are tire temperatures? I would very much like to see the tire temperatures. That's the physics going on with the tires. So that's not what I want to see. Before the tire temperatures completely drop off, what are they doing? Tire debug, we can see some temperatures there. Core temp 63 degrees C. Okay. Alright, so they're a little bit cold because we just came back into the pits running slowly, but they're not overheating, I'll tell you that much. There's a tire overlay. Wear rates are alright. A little bit more wear on the rear, as you would expect, because all of your traction is there, and of course I've been spinning them up. So I don't think we've got any sort of setup issues with the tires there. The car just might be a little bit oversteery at low speed. Remember, a blown diffuser on this car. We can lengthen 6th gear a little bit. And I think we can add some rear wing and add a little bit of front wing again as well. We'll have a look at the chat once again. I've got the chat up on my phone, obviously because I can't put YouTube up on my computer screen right now. Let's see. I last saw it at F2007 for the win. Yes. So. The Twitch idea. I don't really know much about Twitch. I've watched a couple of Twitch streams, but I've never done anything with Twitch, and I really don't know about it. I mean, it could be something, but at the same time, everybody who follows me because of YouTube, and I don't know if it would be the wisest decision to expand my video content onto a different platform yet. I mean, yes, I do other social media things, sharing stories, writing posts, that sort of thing, but in terms of videos, I only post videos to YouTube. So, I don't know. It could be something to consider. I don't know much about it, though. I'd have to do some more research. Active suspension. I don't think active suspension is represented. Well, here's the thing. The FW14 A-Spec was a passive car, so this car wouldn't have active suspension anyway. The 14B was an active car, and obviously the 15C that followed in 1993 was an active car. Assetto Corsa has a few cars in it stock that do have active suspension. I'm talking about the McLaren P1, LaFerrari FXXK. There might be a couple others in there as well. All those cars also have active aero, so they've got they have big wings on the back that'll retract at speed, and they'll pop up as an air brake under braking. So they can implement active aero in Assetto Corsa, and they do it. Those cars also have active suspension. I'm not sure if those systems are emulated in Assetto Corsa or not, but I do know that Assetto Corsa does feature cars stock that have active suspension. I don't know of any mods that have active suspension in them as of yet. If anybody were to do a 14B or a 15C, obviously those cars had active suspension, but I don't know if they'd be able to implement that. And yes, I do agree that Assetto Corsa has taken over in terms of the modding community. rFactor 1 really was what got the modding community on its feet. Yeah, there were a couple other sims before that, GTR, Grand Prix Legends, where modders really went to town, but rFactor 1 was really the golden age of the modder, or at very least the adolescence of the modding community, because I think modders have been around since we've had moddable video games, so we can go back to the Commodore 64 days if we really want to. But people, no matter what it is, no matter what the time period is, no matter what the platform is, people always want to try to do things their own way, even if they have a product that from the onset is already pretty good. I mean, I don't know the specifics on this, but I am pretty sure that somebody who bought a Ford Model T back in the early 1900s took it home and said, yeah, it's pretty good, but I want to go faster. And I'm sure somebody then modded a Ford Model T, and then obviously we all know in the American car community anyway, after World War II, guys came back home in 1945 and 1946, and not only did they start buying houses and having babies, but they also started to buy cars. And one of the cars that they could buy back then was the Ford Model T, because they made literally 1 million of them, and they were still plentiful here in the United States in the mid-1940s, because people had either thrown them away and put them in junkyards, or they had kept them and they were just sitting in barns and whatever, because, well, the men were off fighting the war, and the women didn't care as much about cars back then, and no matter what, they probably had bought something to replace it by then anyway. So Ford Model Ts became what we now call the hot rod community. It started with Model Ts, but anyway, people have always wanted to mod things no matter what the technology was, and obviously with video games, it's much more accessible for more people to mod stuff, because you don't have to invest the physical labor, the physical parts, and that sort of thing. You can work in the virtual world, and you can try things and fail and try again, and there's not as much consequence in terms of a monetary investment or a time investment with regard to physical labor. So definitely the modding community is still very healthy here with Assetto Corsa. No major learning curve for Twitch. Yeah, I don't know. I'll look into it. Let's see. Yes, these days even humans mod themselves. Yeah, I don't know how much all of you have been able to figure out about me from little references and stuff that I make from time to time in some of these videos, but one of the other things that I'm totally obsessed with is politics. I studied political science at university and sociology and all of that kind of stuff, so I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, I do know quite a bit about what ravages modern culture is currently going through, and yeah, people do mod themselves nowadays. For better or worse, they do it. I'll leave my opinion out of it as much as I can, but yeah, everything is moddable nowadays. However, I think the only things that are still officially non-negotiable, death and taxes. Got some more gas in this thing. Do a low fuel-ish run. Remember, long lap here at Spa, so even a low fuel run is going to be well over 20 liters. We have more wing. We're still on those soft tires. Yep. Yes, of course doing a burnout out of the pits, because I just can't do it any other way. A little bit more wing through a rouge should be a little bit less terrifying. That's a more positive turn in straight away into Lake Cuban. I could do it in third gear like I want to rather than second. Still have this uncontrollable urge to drift it. Don't drift it. Come on. Be mature. Has Pouhon better? Yep, better. You know, one thought that did just occur to me, and I don't know if it already exists in Assetto Corsa, but if it doesn't, it needs to right now. Somebody needs to do the original Spa-Francorchamps layout, the original Grand Prix circuit that went between the towns of Spa and Francorchamps and gave us those wonderful corners, like Masta, for example. We need that. We really need that. Kunos did a good job, to the best of their ability, recreating the mid-60s layouts of Silverstone and Monza. They need to do that for Spa, badly. Because, as far as I know, most of the original circuit is still there. I mean, the original circuit was just public roads, and aside from some repavement and maybe some very gentle reprofiling of some of those corners that just have happened over the years for drainage reasons, I think the circuit still technically exists, so who knows? Go out to the Belgian countryside and laser scan the original Spa-Francorchamps, because we need it desperately in this sim right now. And I guess Monza was a little bit easier of a project for them to do because the circuit obviously is still there. And the banking is still there as well. So there it is. And just use your creative license to put all of the details in as you think they would have been in the mid-60s. Silverstone as well. The circuit is still there, although very different from what it was back then. You know, most of the original tarmac from the original Silverstone circuit is still there, at least in terms of where tarmac is today. It's obviously been torn up, but I think there are still a couple active runways at Silverstone, because I know a lot of helicopters fly in and out of there, particularly on the Grand Prix weekend, so it obviously was an air base in World War II, and it still is used somewhat as an airport today, so they didn't have a problem recreating the mid-60s layout for Silverstone either. So Kunos, get to Spa and do the original circuit, please. Alright, let's think about lap time. If we break into the 140s, we'll have made progress. Oh yeah, that's lovely. Absolutely loving that. Brakes, turn. There we go. I'm starting to get my head around that instability mid-corner. You've got to get back on the gas as quickly as you can because of that blown diffuser. You've got to drive like Sebastian Vettel, basically. Low-speed stuff, you've just got to hang on to it because you're not going to get the downforce even if you slam on the gas. 149.819. We have officially made progress. And we're probably going to have to pit at the end of this lap because I've only got 10 liters of fuel left. And I don't think we could make it back around a second time, even at reduced speed. Yep, just getting it a little sideways there. Nothing special. Now, of course, if ever I got the absolute ludicrous opportunity to drive an FW14 in the real world, well, first of all, I probably wouldn't get it out of first gear. There's no way in hell that I would ever want to make it go sideways. I wouldn't even want to think about how much something like this would be worth. I mean, they only built maybe 8 of them, maybe. Of those original 8, for argument's sake, how many still exist? I don't know if any were ever destroyed in big accidents. I don't remember any big accidents in 1991 for Williams, but I could be wrong. So let's say, for argument's sake, all 8 survive to this day, and they're all in running order. What would something like that be worth? Bearing in mind that its immediate successor won the World Championship. 10 million? 20 million? I don't know. In any event, what I do know, that's a 149.479. And we'll go backwards into the pits here. Yes, I can do that too. Spin turns for the win. Now, one thing that did happen at the end of that lap, though, was a very glorious slide out of the bus stop. What did that look like? I'm just very curious. What did that slide look like? In the meantime, I'm looking through the comments here. And coming up to that bus stop moment, if we can still call this the bus stop, the abomination that it is. Yep, very swirly. That wasn't the best angle on it. It felt a little bit more dramatic in the cockpit than I think it looked like from the outside. Yes, why is Lessart not in this game? I don't know. It really needs to be in this game. And especially because we're getting a release tomorrow with more Le Mans cars. Audi LMP1 this time. We need Lessart. Big time. There's that slide. All right, it wasn't that dramatic. It felt more glorious to me than it looked on the outside. Oh, well. In any regard, yeah, the car feels okay. Fastest in Sector 2 that time. We've dropped off marginally in Sector 3, and we've dropped off big time in Sector 1. Well, maybe not that much. Telemetry all looks pretty pedestrian. No surprises there. You can just see the, on the gas there, you can see the big blips you see on the gas are the downshifts. That's automated. And then you can see how I sort of stab at the throttle through the corners. But no, nothing really too dramatic there. Nothing untoward on telemetry, that's for sure. Can I deal with the oversteer that I get on corner exit from the low-speed corners? The obvious solution to it is just to be a little bit less enthusiastic on the throttle. The other solution to it is just don't spin, which for the most part I can manage. But if it's going to be at the expense of tire life, are there any setup changes that we could maybe make? No graining, no blistering on the tires, which is a good thing. To be honest, the car feels pretty good to me. I do enjoy it when a car is a little bit lively, so I like it. doing 149s around here, it's a little bit difficult to compare because in 1991, obviously, they were running a slightly different configuration of this track, and I think that new bus stop adds about 4 seconds or so to the lap time. So, it is what it is. Let's see. Yes, completely random note. I went to see your oldest videos, a quirky variety type things. Yeah. When I first started this channel, I was a junior in high school, and I didn't have all that much time to make videos, and I obviously wasn't very good at it. I didn't have the sort of equipment that I needed to do it well, so I just had R Factor running on an old HP laptop, believe it or not, and that's where my first R Factor videos came from, and they were all very rough, very crude. I didn't do commentary back then, so it just... yeah, they're pretty ugly when I go back and look at them. But for the time, it was the best I could do. It was the best I knew how to do, and in terms of the equipment I had, it was basically all I could do. So they just are what they are, and for the most part, those videos just languished around in the dregs of the internet because, well, nobody really saw them. Nobody knew what R Factor was, at least not in the reach that I had as a very, very small channel with about 20 subscribers. But yeah, that's what I did. I also did, in the beginning, some reviews of my 1/18 scale model cars, which I still have all of them. I don't know if maybe you guys would be interested to see them again, or to see some of the others I have, because I've got a lot of them. But basically, the reviews now that I do of the cars in Assetto Corsa, the idea started all the way back then with the review videos of my model cars, and now I think it's a whole lot better to do it in AC simply because, well, it's a lot more interactive. There's live action. It's not just a bunch of still pictures. It's, yeah, you can actually see what I'm talking about in real time, so it's fun. They might be planning to release Le Mans around the actual time of the 24-hour race. Maybe. Well, here's the problem. If you want to bring Circuit de l'Essat to Assetto Corsa, because the track is only in its race configuration once a year. And at that, it's only in its race configuration for 3 or 4 days out of the year. So if you want to go out and you want to laser scan that track, you need to make sure that you are at Le Mans during the race weekend. And aside from that, you also have to make sure that you're at Le Mans when the track is quiet on the race weekend, because most of the circuit is public roads, remember. At least in the Le Mans spec. There is an infield circuit that I believe is used a bit more often, but most of that 8.5-mile circuit is public roads, which obviously need to be opened up because people still need to live their lives during the race weekend. So they don't have a very large window with which to work if they want to laser scan Le Mans. The only alternative that they would have would be to laser scan the infield circuit and then drive around the public roads like anybody else and try to get the best measurements they could from that. But I don't know. If they are planning to do that release in the middle of June to coincide with the 24 Hours of Le Mans, they needed to have been there last year, and I don't know if Kunos were there last year. Will I ever join the sim racing system in Assetto Corsa? I saw that comment a couple of days ago, and I haven't gotten a chance to look into it yet, but I will look into it. They could ask Pastor Maldonado to cause a red flag. Yeah, that might work. What's he doing nowadays? I haven't really heard anything about him, other than the fact that he has a cousin. And his cousin is racing, which is really, really, really scary. As in, terrifyingly scary. I wonder if his cousin also has received a lifetime ban from entering Monaco. What is Pastor Maldonado doing? Yes, as I've gone to Google. What is he doing? I don't know what he's doing. All I know is that from the Wikipedia article, Maldonado is an outspoken political figure, which is rare in the racing world. He considers himself a socialist and was a friend of the late Venezuelan president, Hugo Chavez. Yes. Yes, I did know that about him. Jonah, hello. And yes, I did see that meme. In British Formula 4. I don't know what his cousin's first name is. I do know that he is a Maldonado, and yep, he's crashing British Formula 4. Well, the biggest thing that I remember seeing from Maldonado's racing career was not his menagerie of crashes in Formula 1. It was that he went to, I believe it was Venezuela, and he did a demo run with an old Williams car, and he crashed it. He ran. He tried to do a spin turn in the middle of a plaza, in the middle of a square, and he swung the back end right around, and he crashed into the curbing on the outside of a fountain that was in the square, and he ripped the left rear off the car in the process. It was yikes. Yeah, he is testing for Pirelli. Maybe that's why the Pirelli tires are so conservative this year, because they don't trust Maldonado with them. No, Jonah, you have not spoken to me live before. Welcome aboard. A setup guide video. Yes, I could do that. Part of what I'm trying to do with that Sim Racing 101 series that I sort of do haphazardly, I do talk about vehicle dynamics in those. I talk about understeer and oversteer and weight transfer. Those are the three biggest concepts that you need to grasp in order to understand how to make a setup, because if you know how to feel those things and you know what causes those different conditions, that's what then is going to give you the information you need to make changes to the car. The changes that you make on the car, though, are a completely different kettle of fish, and that's where you need to understand what's going on mechanically. For weight transfer, for example, you accelerate, the weight shifts to the back of the car. When you're in a car or any sort of vehicle in real life, when you accelerate, you get pushed back in your seat, and your chest feels a little heavier, your arms feel a little heavier. That's the weight transfer. That's inertia, because a body at rest wants to stay at rest, and a body in motion wants to stay in motion. So when you brake, you get the opposite effect. Everything goes forward. The front of the car dips down. You go forward in your seat, and you feel like somebody is pushing on the back of your head there. You sort of have to consciously hold your head up a little bit more. And in a race car, because the speeds are higher and the acceleration is more fierce and the braking is stronger, all of those forces are magnified more. So when you have those situations in a race car, you have to make changes to the chassis setup to make sure that you can deal with those forces. So with weight transfer, mostly you're going to be dealing with your suspension. We mentioned under braking how the nose will dip down toward the tarmac because the weight shifts forward. Well, knowing that, you can then say it goes too far down and you start to scrape the surface of the road. You would raise the front ride height a little bit, or what you could do is you could also add a little bit more stiffness to the front suspension there. So you see the bump stop here. When the suspension is in compression, there's a little rubber boot that is on the bottom of one of the dampers. I'm assuming that you have a suspension linkage that moves vertically up against a damper. In this Formula 1 car here, it's a little bit different, but you have that bump stop there, and you can make that bump stop a little bit less stiff to give the suspension a little bit more give, a little bit more travel in that compression, so that it doesn't either bottom out with the nose on the ground, or it doesn't do what's called bottoming the suspension, where the suspension runs out of travel range, and then the car is it's a skateboard at that point. Travel range, however, you can also increase or decrease that to give the suspension physically more room. On this Formula 1 car, you have push rods that go up into the chassis, and they compress and extend according to the load that they're under. So if you want to have the car a little bit more compliant over bumps, or to have a little bit more response under braking, a little bit more leeway there on the front end, you can increase the travel range of the suspension so that you have a little bit more room in its compression and its extension. And you can do that on all four corners until you find something that feels all right. You also have weight transfer in the corners. You know, when you're in a real car, you turn right and you feel like you're being pushed to the left. That's because an object in motion tends to stay in motion, and it will maintain its velocity and its vector. Vector is direction of travel and the magnitude of that travel, so the speed. So speed plus velocity is a vector. You get pushed off to the left because you always want to keep going in that same vector. So the way a car responds to that is it rolls. So as you turn right, you'll notice the car rolls left. You turn left, you'll notice the car rolls right. That's where anti-roll bars come in. And on this car, at very least, we've got them on the front and rear. And this is in Newton meters. So this is a measurement of torque. And torque here being applied laterally across the front or rear axle from left to right. So it's a lateral application of torque. And when you set how stiff an anti-roll bar is, you're basically going to be setting how much the car rolls when you turn into a corner. Remember, it's always going to roll in the opposite direction because of inertia. But in a nutshell, those are the things that you have to look for. It does get a little bit more complicated than that, but to be honest, the complications come in when you talk about the actual settings you make in the car versus the reasons why you make them. Really, physics is actually very simple because we see it every day. Everything we do involves physics in some way or another. So if you really, the only thing that I could recommend in terms of trying to get your head around what to do with a setup in terms of what you feel you need, just be observant. Look at what the car is doing. Or when you're out in the real world, when you're driving a real car, look at what it's doing. How does it react when you turn into a corner? How does it react when you accelerate or brake? And if you can apply that knowledge then to what you're feeling in a sim, I think it'll be a little bit clearer for you. Just observe. Don't think too much. Just look at what happens. Let's see. Yeah, you should do another race with the 2017 McLaren and modern IndyCar. It would be good if we had an actual McLaren in 2017 spec. I know ACFL has a mod out there right now with it. It's not good. The lap times are way too fast, so it's not a realistic representation at all. But I could do it in Formula Hybrid. I do want to do a video about Formula 1 and IndyCar and the differences that we have, and obviously in the context of what Fernando is doing. But the problem is, yeah, we've got an IndyCar mod. United Racing Development put out that, why am I blanking on it? DW12. They put out the DW12 mod, I believe last year, and it's still very good. And we have Formula Hybrid, but the problem is we don't have a good oval version of Indianapolis for Assetto Corsa. I actually don't know of any real oval circuits at all for Assetto Corsa. If we had Indy, that would be really good. The only other way I could do it would be to use iRacing, which I could do, but I think Assetto Corsa gives me the opportunity to have better visuals. Plus, I know all of you are more familiar with Assetto Corsa anyway, so I would like to do it in AC if possible, but again, we need a good version of Indianapolis, or really any oval, to be honest. I could, in theory, do it on the Monza banking, but it's just so bumpy that Formula Hybrid or the IndyCar just won't have a prayer of going around there at high speed. So it'd be really good to get a modern oval circuit. Well, that woke me up a little bit. Brakes. In case you guys can't tell, I've got all the confidence in the world now. .148, yes! We're also on the qualifying tires, which means they're going to be going off right about now. Yeah, that's what you call the rugged edge. Yeah, a little bit of gravel never hurt anybody, right? Talking about Maldonado. We're still down on the Delta, I think by 1,000th of a second. This lap was not the most efficient. Can we make anything up here in the bus stop with the four-wheel drift going through that second apex? Oh yeah, we actually made up 10th and a half. So that answers my question. Oh boy, oof. And now I've just killed myself. Yeah, I missed the apex at Eau Rouge proper, which is the part of the corner. I'll show you what I mean here. The actual corner Eau Rouge that we all know and love is not the hill. It's this little kink right here, where you see this apex curbing. And it's called Eau Rouge because of this stream that runs underneath the circuit. I don't know why, but this little creek is literally called Red Water, and I don't know why, but yep, it goes underneath the circuit and underneath this little bridge here. And this is Eau Rouge, the little kink here. Everything from the kink up the hill and then to the top of the hill, that is called Radillon, and that is really what we're talking about when people say Eau Rouge. People look at Eau Rouge, they look at this corner, they look at this picture in particular, at the bottom of the hill going up, and they say, oh, Eau Rouge, technically no. That's Radillon. The actual Eau Rouge corner is just this little kink. Little bit of trivia for you. But it doesn't take away from the mystique of Spa-Francorchamps at all, or definitely the mail attachments you need to take this corner very fast. And you can see the wonderful little skid marks that I've left here because I was offline through Eau Rouge, and then I hit the apex curbs too hard, and yeah, I pulled a Jacques Villeneuve, really. Who had a massive accident here in '99, I believe. No, it couldn't have been 99 because it was... Or maybe it was, because I don't remember. I know Jacques Villeneuve had a big accident here one year. Alex Zanardi had a huge one in, I believe, 1993. And who was Villeneuve's teammate in 99? Was it Panis? Because if it was, he also had a big accident. But as you can see, ASR have not really done a great job with damage modeling on the FW14 because the car appears pretty much unscratched, even though it just went into the tire wall at about 185 miles an hour. But be that as it may. Oh yeah, I forgot. We got to reset our camera here. But this, you know what? That's actually pretty cool. I do like these flyover free cam effects. It actually does give you a very nice sense of the proportions of this circuit. You know, if you were going to go to a Grand Prix, Spa's probably not a bad one to go to because you can see, even though the circuit is the longest currently in Formula 1, you could actually walk around the infield pretty quickly. And because the elevation changed, you've actually got quite a few very nice areas to observe from. So I don't know if anybody's ever been to Spa, but I would very much like to go someday. It is one of my favorite circuits. So yeah, because I could picture here, you get into the infield. I don't know exactly where you'd be parking. Probably in one of these lots here. And then you walk into the circuit, and then you're here in the center where you'd have the paddock set up, hospitality areas and all that stuff, and I imagine tons of vendors. And then from here, it doesn't seem like a very long walk to be able to get to, well, you can see Blanchimont right there from this area, not underground. You know, you'd be seeing Blanchimont, the run back up the hill. Walk back across the forest, you're at Kemmel. Do some hiking down this very steep face, it must be said, and oh look, you're at Pouhon. So, yeah, some interesting observation areas for sure at Spa. I did that time on qualifying tires as well, Felipe. 148, yeah, that was on qualifying tires. Hola Mazda, thank you very, very much. Saludos desde los Estados Unidos. Yeah, Daytona, 24 Hours of Daytona. It is the first major race of the year, and I do watch it. Problem is, I never get to watch the whole thing because it's just so long. And for the most part, in endurance racing, we don't really see too many battles for the win because, well, the races are just so long, and you got to make sure you survive for the race distance first. And the name of the game in endurance racing is very much finish the race and see where you end up, because there are no points on offer for running for 23 hours, for example. You've got to run 24 hours. And that's really what Ferdinand Porsche was thinking about, too, when he was designing his race cars way back in the day. Whatever you do, it must last 24 hours. And, for example, Chris Harris did a great interview with I believe his name is Norbert Singer, the designer of the Porsche 962 that, of course, won Le Mans in the 80s. And, he said, whatever you do, make sure that it lasts 24 hours, and then we'll see where we finish. But you must finish the race. So, yeah, that's endurance racing. As far as the Indy 500 goes, yeah, I would really love to see Alonso win it, as unlikely as it is. I know that he has the skill to be able to win that race, but such a race like Indy, it's so long, there are so many cars, there are so many things that can happen. The tolerance for error is effectively zero. It's basically like the Monaco Grand Prix, but twice as fast. So you've really got to be absolutely perfect through every single corner. And yeah, you can say it's an oval. First of all, it's really a rectangle, thank you very much. But, there are only 4 corners, and you can take all 4 corners flat out. Yeah, that's true, but you're also going to be running within a couple feet of the car alongside of you. And you might be doing that all day long. So the potential for error continues to go up the further you go into the race as you start to get worn out and whatever. So in terms of the stamina and the commitment and the precision needed to do well at Indy, I would say it's about equal to the Monaco Grand Prix, where, along that circuit you've got 78 laps for an hour and a half. Average speed still over 100 miles an hour, even though it is the slowest circuit that F1 goes to. And the best drivers at Monaco get within 3 inches of the barrier. I mean, Ayrton Senna, you can just see his onboards, and you can't tell if he's actually touched the barrier or not. He's that close. So that's what you need to do if you're going to be fast at Monaco. And at Indianapolis, yeah, you've got a little bit more space before you hit anything, but at the same time, you're going about twice as fast as you would at Monaco. So the time from which you make a mistake to the time to which you hit something hard and immovable is effectively instant. So I think it's the same amount of precision, the same amount of skill that I think you need. Yes, at Indy you cannot fall into the harbor. Although it's very surprising how few cars actually have gone into the harbor at Monaco. Paul Hawkins did it in the 60s in Formula 1, and I think there was another driver who did it. Was it Graham Hill who made it into the harbor at Monaco? I'm not sure. Or was it Ascari? I don't know. Looks like it was Ascari. He went into the harbor at Monaco. I did not know that. In terms of Toyota winning Le Mans, they really should have done it last year. It was the lead car that slowed down on the final lap, wasn't it? I remember watching it and just thinking, really? Toyota, for all of those years in Formula 1, they had the biggest budget in the pit lane. They had some of the best engineers. They had good drivers. I mean, Ralf Schumacher, Montoya to this day rates Ralf Schumacher very highly. And he has some Grand Prix wins to his credit, all from his Williams days, of course. But, yeah, Ralf Schumacher was no slouch. And, yeah, Toyota could not win in Formula 1, and they can't win at Le Mans either, at least not yet. We'll see. And yeah, Mark Webber did make it into the harbor. He was not in the car, though. Oops. Alright. I almost accidentally banned somebody. I hope I didn't. Yeah, Toyota F1 team to be where drivers lost their potential. Yes, I agree. Jarno Trulli at Renault in 2004. He won the Monaco Grand Prix. It was his only Grand Prix victory. But if you're only going to win one race in your career, make it Monaco, because that's just really awesome. But yeah, once he went to Toyota, Trulli was still a very good qualifier, and I think to this day people still rate him very highly in terms of his qualifying performances, but he could never turn it into a performance during a race. And obviously his last years in Formula 1 with Toyota, and then eventually going off to Caterham once Toyota folded. Yeah, Jarno Trulli, his career definitely began its downturn with Toyota. Ralf Schumacher as well. He retired from Formula One at the end of 2007 from Toyota after being reasonably successful at Williams. So, yeah. Let's see. Okay, Sean, yes, seeing the night stints at Le Mans. It's interesting because racing is something that is obviously very exciting, and it's something we look forward to watching and all of that, but whenever I watch a night race, not the Formula One ones, because they're short enough, and obviously they're usually on in the middle of the either the middle of the day or early in the morning for me anyway here on the East Coast of the U.S. So I don't fall victim to this. But when I watch a race at night, and it actually is nighttime for me as well, it turns from being something very exciting to something that's actually very soothing, almost meditative to watch. And I can often fall asleep to a race. It's interesting. That's something that is so exciting and usually gets the adrenaline going, even just watching it on television. It is interesting how something like that can turn into something that's actually very relaxing. Bobbert E. Lee. Yes, I did not fall for that one. Yeah, you have this game on PS4, and you just got the Highlands update. I don't know why Kunos do this, but you guys on console get the updates about a month later than we do on PC, and I don't know why that is. Obviously, rolling out an update on a console is different from rolling it out on PC, but I don't think that's quite fair, because I've had the Highlands circuit for the better part of 2 months now, and it's absolutely great. Same thing though with the 911 RSR. We've had that for about 2 months. It's old news for us, even though you're just getting it. We've already played with that car and we've seen what it does, and we either love it or we hate it at this point. But you console guys, you're just getting it now. And it really puts you guys behind the curve, and it's not fair. It's really not fair. I don't know if it's an issue with licensing restrictions or things like that for the console, but Kunos need to do something about that, because it's really not nice, to be honest, to put the console guys at such a disadvantage in terms of when they can get the content, because we have it on PC, it exists, and it's good. So I don't know why they can't get it out on console. Speaking of night races, the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix is a race that can really make me rant. Where should we start with the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix? There are so many things that were so wrong about that race. Well, first of all, to set the scene here, Ferrari and McLaren were going at it for the Drivers' Championship. Lewis Hamilton was in position to win his first driver's title, and Felipe Massa was in position to win his first driver's title. So there was the championship battle there. In Singapore, though, Ferrari's situation entirely went to hell, because Massa came in for his first pit stop, I believe it was, and Ferrari they had a bad tire change to start with, and remember, refueling was still a thing. The safety car had just come out for the crash of Nelson Piquet Jr., which we later found out about a year later was intentional. So the safety car came out for that crash. Felipe Massa and Kimi Räikkönen both pit. Massa comes in first, so Räikkönen is stacked behind. So Ferrari under pressure to get both cars serviced. Massa pits, they have a bulky tire change, and they go to pull out the fuel nozzle and it sticks. However, the front-end mechanic on Massa's car, the guy with the lollipop, although they weren't using the lollipop, they were using a light system at this time. So the front-end mechanic hits a button that turns that light from red to green, telling Massa to go. The instant he sees the refueling guy flinch. The fuel nozzle stuck, however, in Massa's car, so Massa takes off at full force. He pulls the fuel rig down, the hose detaches, the hose whips around, and it knocks a couple of the Ferrari mechanics to the ground. Meanwhile, Raikkonen just rolls his car into the pit box, lined with mechanics, some of whom are on the ground bleeding. And then Massa has to stop at the end of the pit lane because he realizes he still has the fuel hose attached. And Ferrari then, after servicing Raikkonen and, still bloodied and battered, now run down to the end of the pit lane to pull the fuel hose off of Massa's car. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso has made his pit stop already, and he's in the race lead. Lewis Hamilton is already gone and serviced and whatever, so Felipe Massa's World Championship really was lost in Singapore 2008. So, yeah. Yeah, Max Mosley. I don't miss that moron. Bernie Ecclestone. I have a love-hate opinion of Bernie, but Max Mosley, as president of the FIA, was an absolute jackass. Everything that he said offended somebody, and when I talk about offensive, I'm talking about Nazism. He was that kind of a guy. So Max Mosley was not a good person, first of all, and secondly, they kept pushing these draconian rules in Formula One, and we're no stranger to that, being fans of this sport, but it was just dirty, and you know that there were millions of dollars mishandled by not only by Max Mosley but by the FIA in general, and I don't know the details about all of the deals that ended up getting us the races in places like Bahrain, but oil money was exchanged and who knows what else. We're not exactly talking about the most friendly parts of the world, a lot of these places, so Max Mosley was in the thick of all of that, and it was just really dirty. So I was very happy when Max Mosley said he would not stand for re-election as FIA president, although I don't know how open an election that really is. I'm starting to get fed up with Jean Todt as well, because he doesn't seem to like Skip Carey and the guys over at Liberty Media, and the FIA thinks that it owns Formula One, which it doesn't. So, be that as it may, I have a little bit of a love-hate opinion of Bernie Ecclestone and of the FIA in general. Yes, Jean Todt was pushing for rules, and he still is pushing for rules that people don't like, because I don't understand what has gone into the mentality of the FIA, but they believe that Formula One needs to be some sort of eco-friendly, carbon-neutral, hug-a-tree fest, and okay, if I could be as objective with this as I can, if there is something that Formula One can do to lessen its impact on the environment without appreciably impacting the show, then do it. Why wouldn't you do it? If it's not going to cost too much and it's not going to impact the integrity of your product, then do it. Fine. If it's only going to help something. But what they've proceeded to do was neuter the cars and to an extent neuter the drivers as well. 10 years ago, or actually a little bit more than 10 years ago now, 12 years ago, we had 10-cylinder engines, okay? They sounded absolutely incredible. 19,000 plus RPM, about 1,000 horsepower out of them. They were the fastest cars ever, and everybody loved them. It was literally perfect. There was nothing wrong with Formula One. The only thing that might have been wrong with how they did the race weekends was this silly aggregate qualifying system that they had for 2005, where they had a qualifying session on Friday afternoon, and then they had a qualifying session on Saturday, and they combined the times from those two sessions to give you your grid. So each driver had 2 qualifying laps, but it wasn't the fastest lap wins, it was fastest on aggregate. So in theory, you could have somebody who wasn't the fastest in either session still be on pole position. But I digress. I think a bit of the eco agenda did permeate the FIA and its upper-level management, and it did contribute to honestly, the horrible-sounding engines we have today. Yeah, the cars now are still putting out 980, 1,000 horsepower, but they don't sound like they are. And even though the cars look a lot better nowadays, they look like now a logical progression from what we were seeing from 2008, for example. But the engines still aren't there. Yeah, they're insanely powerful, and they're insanely cool. And even more importantly, they're insanely efficient. I think the Mercedes and the Ferrari engines are now surpassing 50% thermal efficiency. So that means that 50% of the energy contained in a single drop of gasoline is now being converted exclusively to driving the pistons in that engine. So that means you're losing less energy through things like evaporation, unburned fuel, stuff like that, but still, that's only 50%. And these are the most advanced internal combustion piston engines on the planet. So that does tell you where the technology is. 50% is now the state of the art. But should we really be concerned with those efficiency figures? Part of the reason why they went to these turbocharged V6 power units was to save fuel. Is racing about saving fuel? No, it's not. It's about going fast. So that eco agenda did come through with the current engine package. The V10 engines, no, they were not fuel efficient at all. But you're putting on a show. This is entertainment. People turn on the television or go to the track because they want to see something that is absolutely outrageous. And those V10 cars were absolutely outrageous. Let's see. Yeah, that 2009 era. All of that development work was lost. It really was. 2007, 2008, there were a couple cars in particular that stood out to me in those years. In 07, the McLaren MP422, which was by far the best car on the grid. We all know why it was the best car on the grid, but still it was the best. And then 2008, there were two really impressive cars. You had the Ferrari F2008, obviously, and actually the BMW F108. That one is probably my favorite modern era Formula One car because it just look at that thing. You have little winglets on it everywhere, and you could just tell that every single piece of that was designed so meticulously. But then 2009 comes along, and none of that stuff is allowed anymore. So you have the teams who dropped in literally hundreds of millions of dollars to develop those cars over those 2 years, the 07 and 08 cars, and then January 1st, 2009 comes around, and okay, all of it's irrelevant. You can't have it anymore. So if you're trying to save costs, why not just keep the regulations absolutely identical and say you're only allowed X development this year? Just a thought. Then again, I can't remember the last time logic ever prevailed in Formula One. BMW F109, yeah, the 09 cars, they looked clean because they were relatively simplistic when it came to topside aero. But you're right, they were very aerodynamic and they were very aero efficient, but they had to use the aero in a completely different manner. In 07 and 08, you had the big wings and all the winglets and turning vanes and whatever on the top side, and they're generating downforce from the top of the car. In 09, though, you get a situation actually somewhat similar to what this Williams is doing, because you notice the utter absence of any topside aerodynamics with the exceptions of the front and rear wings. All of your downforce generation comes from the under tray. And in 09, it was no consequence that we were talking about diffusers. If you remember from 2009, it was Braun, Toyota, and Williams who had what were called double-decker diffusers. And the rationale with that was if you can put more holes in the rear end of the bodywork, you can accelerate air through different orifices, literally, and then you can create more channels of low pressure under the car and suck the car down. Ferrari and McLaren, for example, they had a single-decker diffuser, which actually is quite similar to what's going on this Williams. So you just have one main channel to accelerate air out the back, but Braun, Toyota, and Williams were using two. And they were exploiting a loophole in the regulations around the starter hole in the diffuser, because you're allowed to have a hole in the back of the diffuser through which you can insert the starter motor to start the engine. And Braun, Toyota, and Williams said, well, what if we were to make that hole for the starter oblong rather than circular. So basically make a big oval cutout, and then tell the FIA, well, it's just to make sure that the mechanic can really see the back of the gearbox so he can get the starter in there. When in reality, it's purely for an aero benefit, and that's exactly what they did. And because the wording of the regulation was as such, it was allowed to stand, and then immediately everybody started to copy it. And that's what happens in Formula One. One team comes up with an idea, it's competitive, and then everybody else says, whoa, that's a great idea, we need to copy this. So, and that's how it works, and that's how innovation works as well. And you can even look into the real world, really, with commerce. You can look at this in terms of technology. Apple, for example. Apple in the 1980s. They came up with a GUI, a graphical user interface, on the Apple Lisa, I believe it was. 1983, I want to say. And it was the first home computer that you could buy, and then you could turn it on, and your monitor shows you pictures, and you can use a mouse to move a cursor and click on the pictures to make the computer do what you want. Before that, you had to memorize lines of code and commands to tell your computer what you wanted to do. Now you could just look at the screen and point to something and the computer would do it. And then immediately thereafter, Microsoft was like, oh wait, we need a GUI. And then Microsoft had a GUI. And then every other computer company that was out there at the time, and every other operating system. And to this day, every other operating system out there that's not Apple or Microsoft. They all have a GUI. But Apple came up with it first, and everybody else saw how cool it was and how useful it was, and then everybody copied it. It's the same story in Formula One. Yeah, Steve Jobs definitely was like, yes, I'm a really smart guy, but the people who are using my product shouldn't have to be as smart as me or as smart as my engineers to be able to use my product. So, yes, and it was obviously a genius decision. Yeah, McLaren and Sauber and Honda. Why are Honda looking to supply Sauber? That's a storyline. I think the other half of this story that we don't know yet is that McLaren are going to say sayonara to Honda. And I think that's obviously appropriate. It's been 3 years now, and McLaren only managed to finish their first race in Spain. Okay? So that's bad. That's really bad. Honda sat out 2014 because they said, we want to take this year to perfect our power unit. So they sat out 2014. 2015 comes along. Everything blows up. 2016 comes along. Everything blows up. 2017 comes along. Everything is still blowing up. So Honda have made absolutely no progress in 3 years. So it's time for McLaren to say goodbye. We're going to get another engine. We're going to build our own engine, or we're going to... You know what? I would not put it past McLaren to run a Ferrari engine, okay? As sacrilegious as that sounds, I bet you anything, if McLaren could somehow negotiate a deal to run a Ferrari engine, they would do it, because they need to get rid of this Honda. And I know McLaren are saying, we're happy with the marriage, but they're not. They're really not, and I think that's pretty obvious at this point. McLaren are getting rid of Honda, and Honda want to stay in Formula One, so they're going to go to Sauber. That's just my thought on this, but that rumor mill saying that McLaren were talking to Mercedes a couple of weeks ago, in my experience watching Formula One, whenever you hear a crazy rumor, there's a true story hidden somewhere in it. And Toto Wolff has gone out saying that, yeah, they have talked to McLaren, but he hasn't said anything else about it. So we know that Mercedes and McLaren are talking to each other. The breakup was ugly, we all know, but McLaren must have gotten a text message from Mercedes recently saying, can we talk? And McLaren said, yeah, sure, we can talk. And that's what's going on right now. Hopefully they'll be able to repair that romance. But I think that's the story. Honda are going to go bye-bye from McLaren, and they're going to go to Sauber just to try and save face. Sauber, on the other hand, though, because they're kind of in a financial crisis, that could that's probably the worst possible thing they could do. The only reason that I would think Sauber would take those Honda engines, knowing how crap they are, is if they were getting them for free or a ridiculously reduced price, because Sauber can't really afford the latest engines. They're running year-old Ferrari engines right now. That's obviously because they can't afford a deal to get the current engines from Ferrari. So if Honda are willing to develop an engine specifically for Sauber, maybe that's why they're doing it. But other than that, I don't know. Pure Armageddon, hello! Would Honda buy out Sauber? I don't know. I honestly don't know if Honda would do that. Peter Sauber is fiercely independent, and he proved that by buying the team back from BMW at the end of 2010. Or really the end of 2009. It was too late for the team to change their name for the 2010 season. So in 2010, Sauber were still called BMW Sauber, even though they were just Sauber. But yeah, Peter Sauber loves his independence, and he is very much a self-made man. So I can't see Peter Sauber selling out again to another car company like he sold out to BMW in 2005. So I don't know if you'd see a Honda buyout of Sauber, but I could see a big-time technical partnership that would extend beyond engines. Basically, you could have Honda design next year's Sauber if you wanted, and then badge it as a Sauber Honda, but I don't think you'd see a total buyout. Unless Peter Sauber were going to get ridiculous amounts of money, personally, from that deal, I don't think it would happen. Yeah, I know Monisha Kaltenborn does. I don't know if she owns. I don't know if she still owns a stake in Sauber or not. Peter Sauber did sell a big stake in it. I don't know if he sold all of it, and I don't know if the deal still included that he had some executive role or not. I'd have to go into the old headlines there. But Mauricia Kaltenborn, to her credit, she's been doing a great job running that team. Even though the results really aren't coming in, she's done a great job with securing Wehrlein, that's for sure, rescuing him from the Manor madness. And, yeah, she is a very competent team principal, and it'd be really cool to see more of her, actually, because I like her managerial style a lot. Yeah, Williams, they haven't been anywhere in the last 20 years, have they? they, wow. Yeah, Williams last won a world championship in 1997 with Jacques Villeneuve. That's it. That's the last time there's been a Williams world champion. Yeah, that's sad. That is really sad. Wow, that is 20 years. That's incredible. I didn't realize that. Yeah. And then their last race win, obviously in 2012 with Maldonado in Spain, but before that it was 2004, Juan Pablo Montoya in Brazil, and that was it. So, yikes, Williams, where are you? They've been focused on aero, and they have very efficient cars when it comes to aero. The straight line speeds, they're often the fastest, but they don't have the cornering speed, and Formula One obviously is all about cornering speed. So Williams, I think they really started to lose their way once they got rid of Adrian Newey, to be perfectly honest. I don't remember exactly when Adrian Newey left Williams. I want to say it was 96 or 97, because after that he started working with McLaren, and then they promptly won the World Championships. So yeah, Yeah, I want to say once Adrian Newey left Williams, they basically lost their aerodynamic direction, and well, they've sort of been languishing in the backfield ever since. Yeah, the last person to win for Williams is Pastor Maldonado. That's yeah, yeah. We can cry about that. I think we need to cry about that. That's bad. And yeah, who would replace Kimi? The person who should replace Kimi is Jules Bianchi. However, it can't be him. So Perez, I think, should replace Kimi. You know, he's he doesn't get the notoriety that he deserves, but he is such a consistent driver. I think he's finished in the points 33 times consecutively so far. So that spans, you know, well over a single season. That's the better part of 2 seasons. So that's consistency. And also, let's remember that. Damn, what was my point? Let's remember that the consistency for Perez is not just indicative of him; it's indicative of Force India being able to get on with the program, because the driver doesn't finish the race if the car isn't reliable. So Force India also doing a great job there with getting the cars to the end of the race, and then, you know, because they're still running at the end and they've been able to survive whatever carnage might be happening around them, they can score some points. So that's a great performance, really. News on Michael Schumacher? There is none. There really isn't. All we know is status quo. As far as I know, he either can't speak or he can't speak a lot. He can't walk. Memory problems. You know, he suffered a catastrophic brain injury. So the fact that he's even still alive is miraculous, and any sort of recovery that you're going to get from him, it's just not going to be really. It's not going to be much of the person that he was, and it's unfortunate, but that's the nature of this kind of an injury, and he's he's very lucky to be alive at all, given the extent of what happened to him. We still don't know exactly what happened to him in terms of the true extent of his injuries. We know that he hit his helmeted head on a rock skiing off piste in Switzerland, and yeah. Yeah, I know. And think about all that risk that Schumacher took when he was driving. You know, all of those races in the rain, all of those races, you know, in cars that really were on the edge of catching fire at every moment. All of those big accidents he had. He was actually very lucky in his career in that he only had one really big accident and only one relatively serious injury where he broke his leg at Silverstone in 1999. But other than that, Schumacher pretty much stayed out of trouble when it came to injuries. And thankfully, that's something that we're seeing more and more, not only in Formula One, but in motorsport in general. But yeah, all of that risk of 20 years being around Formula One, and you know, obviously longer than that being involved in motorsport, and it's not a racing accident that you know makes his number come up. It's skiing on holiday with his family. So I mean, it does go to show you that even the people who we think of as invincible, who we idolize for being courageous and skilled and things like that, it doesn't matter who you are. Things can still happen to you, even if you've already done some of the craziest things you could possibly do when it comes to your personal safety. So the Schumacher story, to me, it's one of being grateful, to be honest. It's one of being grateful for who you are, for the fact that you're alive, for the fact that you have the opportunity to do whatever it is that you're doing, and to be there and to be sentient and cognizant of the experience of living, because we all know that Michael Schumacher, he lived his life to the fullest. I don't think we can say anything other than that. He saw his talent. People around him saw his talent, and they encouraged him to exploit it and to pursue it. Eddie Jordan saw that he had talent too, and in 1991 he gave him a call saying, "I want you to drive the Belgian Grand Prix," and Schumacher said, "Sure, let's try." And then he goes on to win 91 races and win 7 world championships. And that's the Michael Schumacher story. He took what life dealt him, and he capitalized on it. He used it to his advantage, and he turned it into something that all of us will remember forever. So that's the Michael Schumacher story for me. And as quickly as it came for him, so quickly as well was it taken away. And for all of us, there's a great lesson in that. It's just to be mindful all the time of who we are and where we are and what we're doing, and to be aware that although we hope it doesn't happen, we do everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen. Sometimes bad things can happen to us, and if they do, I think we should all be able to go into that with the peace of knowing that we've done everything that we can to try and live our lives the way that we wanted to, and to try and do good things for other people along the way. Yeah. And in terms of, somebody like Jules Bianchi, obviously he was, and thankfully he was, our first and only fatality since 1994. I say thankfully, not for the fact that it was a fatality, but thankfully for the fact that it was the only one, because motor racing is dangerous, and even though we've had great advancements in safety since 1994, it's dangerous. You're in a car doing 200 miles an hour around a corner in the rain with 20 other cars around you. It's a dangerous thing, and for the fact that we can, it's never good, obviously, when you get serious injuries or you get fatalities, but the fact that you can get one fatality in 20 years of doing things like this on a regular basis, it's good to see that over history, Formula One safety has improved so much. And what did it for Jules Bianchi was nothing to do with the car. It was nothing to do with the circuit. It was a tractor. It was a tractor that shouldn't have been anywhere near the circuit to begin with. Yes, but it wasn't his fault. It wasn't the circuit's fault. It wasn't the car's fault. It was truly a freak incident, something that'll never happen again, and something that never happened before either. You could say the same thing really for Henry Surtees or Justin Wilson or even Felipe Massa. Who would have thought that a suspension component, a spring, an inboard mounted damper could come apart on track and hit somebody in the face, or the off chances of a wheel coming off of a car and then landing exactly on the driver's head in the cockpit, that small exposed space that it is. It's a freak thing. Justin Wilson, the nose cone comes off of a car that's had an accident in front. The driver that's had the accident is perfectly okay, but the nose cone bounces, 50 meters in the air and then comes down, and there's Justin Wilson. I mean, you couldn't try to make that happen. The chances of it are so slim, and then it does. And the tendency for us in those situations is to have a knee-jerk reaction and say, well, we need closed cockpits, or we need a halo, or we need something. But when you pull back and you take a look at things like that, the result is the same. Yes, you lose somebody, and it's not an easy thing, and it's not a good thing. But at the same time, you also are aware that these guys do this knowing those risks, and they do it anyway because they love it. And I'm sure if you could ask Henry Surtees or ask Justin Wilson, yeah, this is what's going to happen to you. But are you satisfied? I think they would probably still say, yeah, I'm a racing driver, and you're going to remember me always as a racing driver. So, you know. No, for the Bianchi accident, nothing was going to do it. He ran into the back of a tractor. It's you could have had that accident in a closed top sports car, like I don't know, a little BMW or something. You could have that accident in a BMW hardtop, and you would still have the same result because just the forces that are going on are just so great. Yeah, the money situation in Formula One, it's a bit ridiculous because the prize money only goes to point scorers, and I don't understand that because everybody participates in the race, and whether or not you finish first or even in the top 10, I don't think it's quite relevant. I think the people who score points and win should get the most of the prize money, but I think it could be distributed out for everybody. But even more importantly, the TV money. Everybody's on TV, whether you're scoring points or even if you're starting the race. If you've participated in the Grand Prix weekend, you're on TV. So you're entitled, in my opinion, then, to some of that payout because you're a part of the show. Even if you are Manor, for example, and you know you're not going to win, and you know you're probably not going to score points, you're still out there. You're still a body in the crowd, and you're making everything look better on TV, and you have sponsors on your car, and they're paying you for that TV exposure. So why not split the pie up a bit more equitably there? Because every team is contracted with Formula One to run in the World Championship. That contract should include payment for every session that's run. Not just the races, not just the point-scoring performances. Every session in which a car turns a wheel, there should be some payout attributed to that. Because these teams, they're businesses. They're privately owned entities, and they're participating in Formula One. There's nothing stopping Ferrari from starting a Works Le Mans program, for example, but they choose to compete in Formula One because they've said that that is a wise business decision for their organization. If someday it no longer is, Ferrari have every right to pull out of Formula One. So if Ferrari's in a position to do that, any Formula One team is. Williams, likewise, could go run an IndyCar if they thought it was going to be something worthwhile for them. So if you're going to have teams in a sport, you need to make sure it's worthwhile for them. It's just like why any of us go and get a job. When you go out on a job interview, yes, the company or the organization that you're working for is looking at you and seeing if you're a good fit for them, but at the same time, when they return with an offer, you have to make sure that their offer works for you. And if I owned a Formula One team and I knew I was going to be at the back of the grid, I'm not sure the Formula One offer is good enough for me. I could probably spend my money more effectively in other areas. Yeah, Williams going to Indy. Yeah, I think that would actually be pretty good. I just came up with that one off the top of my head, but it actually sounds pretty reasonable, to be honest. No, there is no talk of Williams wanting to race at Indianapolis, but I think they could actually adapt to it very nicely. And if, yeah, yeah, we're talking about Lewis Hamilton there, with his personal life. It's his life. He can live however he wants. I don't really like what Lewis Hamilton does in his private time. He's not in a crowd that I would hang with. Not that he's doing anything bad, or the people that he's hanging with do anything bad. It's just not my cup of tea. And I think his hairstyles tend to look pretty ridiculous. But it's his life and he can do what he wants. And the important thing is, when he is in the car and he's there on a Grand Prix weekend, he delivers, and he's still delivering. He's won the World Championship 2 times in the last 3 years. So whatever he's doing, apparently it works. I mean, if I were a Formula One driver, I think I would probably be one of those guys who was always with the team someplace. I would be that guy who was in the debrief until 8 o'clock at night, talking about spring rates on the third spring on the rear end, because I just love the small details and stuff like that. And I'd be talking about, well, in turn 2, when you go to the inside of the track, the tarmac sort of dips down a little bit, and then it comes back up as you get into the curbing, and you get the wheel in the little rut, and you get a little undulation there in the front end. I could see myself giving that sort of feedback. But to each their own. Hamilton apparently enjoys jetting off to the United States on off weekends. Fine. He's a 3-time world champion. I can't really argue with what he's doing, and evidently it works. Yeah, Red Bulls, they do seem to have a pretty good team chemistry. I don't know how well Ricardo and Verstappen get on personally, because I think the age gap between those two guys is still a little bit too big. Verstappen is he's still only 19, remember. So Verstappen is younger than I am by 6 years. So put that in perspective. Um, when he won the Spanish Grand Prix, I don't even know if he had a road license yet, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if he ever got around to getting it. Such were his Formula One commitments. But yeah, Verstappen and Ricardo are definitely a good pairing at Red Bull. But in terms of how they get on personally, I'm not quite sure. Yes, this is an interesting thought experiment. If we were F1 drivers, what would we be like? Yeah, I said I would probably be the guy who was just sitting there with the team all the time talking technical stuff. But, you know, um, yeah, how would I treat the media? Would I care what the media said about me? I'm not sure. To be totally honest, I would talk to the media because number one, you have to. But yeah, I would give interviews and I would just give my honest opinion. And yeah, I would try to keep my mouth shut about the stuff I'm not supposed to talk about. But I don't know. I love the technicalities of this too much. I could totally see myself going into an interview with, I don't know, Martin Brundle or whatever, and he starts talking about technical stuff, and I would say, well, we've got this new damper setup that can deal with these sudden oscillations as the tarmac starts to break up a little bit into the hairpin. Talking about Canada here, and really helps the front end stay planted, and they get on the traction a bit more. And then I could see the team running out and tackling me, saying, "You idiot! You're not supposed to talk about that. Now our advantage is gone." So I could see myself having a little bit too big of a mouth when it comes to the media, but at the same time, I don't know if I would be the sort of guy who would go and meet that little kid who was crying when Kimi retired from the race last weekend. I don't know if I would be that sort of a guy who would be as approachable. So I don't know. I'll never get to find out, but yeah. Yeah, if I had to characterize myself, comparing myself to a driver from the past to the present, I would probably be a lot like Alex Wirtz and Martin Brundle, to be honest. Not the quickest, but able to put in a gritty performance when I needed to, but moreover have a good understanding of what's going on within the team and what's going on with the car. I'd be a very, I'd probably be a pretty good test driver, to be honest, because I could really just sink in there and just deal with the technical stuff and run through whatever test program they had for me. But if I had to be a race driver, I definitely would not be the guy who would be challenging for the championship. I would much rather be in a supporting role. In terms of my favorite driver, though, that I've watched either past or present, it's hard to say because obviously everybody admires Senna and they admire Schumacher because of what they were able to achieve in terms of wins and championships and things like that. And Senna, he's just a very unique character all his own because he not only did he have the performance in the car, but he also had the brain outside of it, and he was just so articulate. And that's something I do identify with a lot. But in terms of just cool guys who have ever been in Formula One, I think the coolest F1 driver was Gerhard Berger because he started his career very late. He did it all on his own. His parents did not approve of it whatsoever. And right at the start of his career, he got into a massive car accident on the road, and he broke his back and he broke his neck. and somehow he was still able to get in there and drive the car. So that was just pure willpower on his part. And then it really comes through in his driving style as well. He started in Formula One right at the beginning of the crazy turbo era, and then 86, 87 with the massive boost pressures that they were running. Berger just had he had balls, really. He really did, and he even says it himself in interviews. And just I really liked him. He is absolutely the most badass son of a bitch ever to race in Formula One, Gerhard Berger. Yes, he did. He won. Gerhard Berger won Benetton's first and last race wins, and Berger's last win in particular, 1996. Yeah, it was the 1996 German Grand Prix. I'm pretty sure. His father had died a couple of days before that race, and Gerhard himself was actually sick that weekend, and it wasn't clear whether or not he was even going to be fit to drive, let alone dealing with. He just lost his father, so Berger shows up to Hockenheim in '97. I'm pretty sure, no, '96. In '96, and he goes to Flavio Briatore and he says, "No, of course I can drive the car. I'm here. I'm going to drive." So Berger gets in the car. I don't think he puts in that great of a performance in practice, and Briatore is like, you're not going to drive this car this weekend. You're not good enough. You don't feel good enough. Go home." And Berger's like, "No, I'm drives the car. I'm here. I'm going to do it." So Berger, in the only way he can do, manages to win the race, and it's absolutely crazy. And you see, as he pulls into Parc Fermé, he jumps out of the car. Briatore runs over and gives him a big hug, and all of a sudden they are best friends again. And then Berger announces that he's going to retire. So you couldn't script it, but of course Berger has to have the last laugh. So yes, absolutely love Gerhard Berger for that. Yes, tall drivers. Justin Wilson, speaking of him, he was very tall, and he had a lot of trouble with Minardi when he was driving there because you don't have any real leeway in terms of the dimensions of these cars. The cockpit has to be a certain size. The height of the roll hoop has to be a certain height. So if you are a tall guy, you got to be able to fit inside that little triangle that they superimpose between the two roll structures, one at the front of the cockpit and then one which is the air snorkel. So if you're tall, there really aren't too many ways that they can fit the car to you. You've just got to sort of cram yourself in there. And Justin Wilson had a lot of problems with Minardi in particular trying to fit into the car, and it was a problem. Yeah, and in terms of me being able to be a Formula One driver, height-wise and size-wise, I'd be essentially the perfect size for it. I'm 5'6" and 150 pounds, so I'd be pretty much right there in terms of what I would need to be. But you know, I think of it this way because I'm relatively short for a man, and it's weird. I get comments from people all the time. Oh, you're kind of short. I'm like, what difference does it make? And I know I'm not the shortest person here, but it is what it is. And I think of it this way: if ever I win the lottery or somehow become independently wealthy, I am the perfect size to fit in a Formula One car someday. So I will get the last laugh no matter what happens. Actually, I'll be able to get some insight on those sorts of dimensions in terms of physical size because I haven't said anything about this yet, but in June I'm actually going to have the opportunity to test a Formula 2000 car over in Pennsylvania. So obviously, in terms of cockpit size and whatever, those cars are a little bit smaller than modern Formula One cars, but you're still going to be really tight in the cockpit there. So I'll be able to report back in terms of how well I fit in it. I don't think I'm going to have any problems fitting in the car. So I don't know. That's going to be something cool. So yeah. I'm going to be doing this at Pocono Raceway, actually, over in Pennsylvania. So where NASCAR goes and where IndyCar goes. We're going to be running the infield course there. So we'll run turn 3 of the NASCAR track, and then the rest is going to be the infield circuit. Yep, the tricky triangle. I'm upset though that I don't get the chance to run the actual triangle because it'd be fun. I would just want to do like a lap or two just to say that I drove on the tricky triangle, But it's still going to be a cool experience for sure. And I've never driven a race car before, so it's going to be a totally new experience. I've driven some racing karts, which are a lot of fun and obviously really fast, but never an actual car before, so it's going to be fun. It's going to be it's a 4-speed unsynchronized manual gearbox. So I'm probably most worried about the gearbox, to be honest, because I drive a manual as my everyday driver, so I'm very familiar with that. But it's obviously a synchronized manual gearbox in my truck that I drive every day. So I've never driven an unsynchronized crash box basically before. So I'm just wondering how that's going to work. But it's a gearbox. I'm sure I'll get the hang of it. Yeah, and I've actually never been to an F1 race. So hopefully someday I'll be able to go. The closest race to me actually would be to go to Montreal because I'm in New Jersey, and Montreal is a lot closer to me than Texas is. So if ever I get to an F1 race, as long as I'm still living here, it'll probably would be the Canadian Grand Prix. In terms of changes from point 0.5 to point 0.6 here in ASR's FW14, which is technically what we're supposed to be talking about here, they've just made some updates to really the internal sounds. There's a bit more of a clunk now on the upshift, but there still needs to be more, to be honest. Yeah, I am hearing that the sounds of the V6 engines are better in person than they are on television. And yeah, I can definitely believe that because on TV there's a whole bunch of processing that happens with that signal as it's coming across not only to your television but from the cameras to the central broadcasting area, and the equipment that's sending that signal out to the satellites and what have you. So I bet you that the engines do sound a lot better in person. To be honest, I think I would prefer to go to Montreal instead of COTA, even though I wouldn't have to go international to go to Texas. But I, I like the Canadian Grand Prix just as an event. It's always exciting. I like the track, and to be honest, I think I'd really like Montreal. I've been to Canada a few times, and every time I've gone, I've always been very impressed. I've always had a wonderful time. The people there are always very nice. They're always very helpful, and to be honest, Canada is just it's first of all, it's a beautiful country, and second of all, it's very clean and it's very orderly. It's everything the United States, at least where I live, isn't. The people where I live are very into themselves and they're very rude, and our streets are dirty and things like that. But Canada, I've always been very impressed. Yes, I have definitely. I've actually experienced that of people from the Midwest in particular. I wouldn't. I'm not quite sure if you would consider Tennessee to be the Midwest technically. I mean, it's kind of on the border of what most people consider to be the Midwest. But people that I've met from the Midwest are very polite, generally speaking. they just listen to you when you speak. They're very considerate. They're very polite. They just tend to they give you a sense that they actually care about what you're saying. So that's definitely not the East Coast, and from what I've seen of the West Coast, is not the West Coast either. But definitely people from the Midwest tend to be a lot nicer. I have a very good friend actually. His parents are both from Indiana, and they're wonderful people. They really are. Pure Armageddon, no, I've never been to Russia, although I would actually very much like to visit someday. Um, the most I know about Russia in terms of what life is what life is like outside Moscow or St. Petersburg is everybody has a dash cam, and those dash cams tend to pick up things that are falling out of the sky. Obviously, I'm talking about the meteor that hit Chelyabinsk. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly in 2013. I think it was, and and people also say "Byat" a lot. Providence Grand Prix. Yeah, Providence, Rhode Island. I don't know if Rhode Island's big enough to have a Grand Prix. Shots fired. Yeah, pretty much every dashcam video that I've ever seen on YouTube comes from Russia. I think you guys do it for insurance purposes. If I'm not mistaken on that, I think everybody. It's a smart idea, honestly, to have a dash cam in your car. But it's actually strange. A lot of towns here in the United States, or even whole states, have laws against filming in a car, which is bizarre. But there it is. Like I know it's legal here in New Jersey. I'm allowed to put a camera in my car and whatever. But in some towns have rules against filming in cars, which is bizarre. But there it is. And some states actually have laws against filming in cars. So yeah. Although other weird laws in the United States, horses are allowed on public roads. All public roads, believe it or not. Nashville Super Speedway? Actually, yeah, I do remember that. I remember the name, or it has a ring to it. I don't know if it just sounds like it's something or if it actually was something, but Nashville Super Speedway, yeah. I think it is a thing. Is it not a thing? You can tell I don't watch NASCAR. Yes, Jonah, go out for a run. I ran earlier today, or actually yesterday now. It's 12:40 in the morning here, 40 minutes past midnight for me. Yeah, Brazilian stock car, I would definitely watch that if there was coverage. And it would just be cool. And I think Rubens Barrichello is still in it. I have a very important meeting at work tomorrow. And I'm still here, and I'm not caring all that much about it, so, yeah. 5:40 a.m., that's awesome. Yeah, CBSSM does have DTM sometimes. You've got to be able to catch it, but yes, Barrichello was probably the first of the famous number 2 drivers. I do have to wonder, though, what that radio chatter was like in Austria 2002. Austria 2001 was bad enough, because Barrichello was also leading there, and, he gave the lead up to Schumacher toward the end of the race. But Austria 2002, he was in exactly the same position, and Ferrari told them, yeah, you need to let Michael pass for the championship. Those were Jean Todt's exact words. And Barrichello must have said, no, I'm not going to do it. You did that to me last year. I'm not doing it again this year. And then I wonder what happened as that race wore on, so Ferrari could make Barrichello give that position up. I wonder if they were like, Rubens, we have your wife, and we have her at, gunpoint, and you're going to give the position up. No. So, I wonder what happened, and then ultimately at the end, Barrichello gave the position to Schumacher on the start-finish straight on the last lap, and it looked so bad. And people still talk about that race, quite obviously, as we're doing right now. So, yeah. See ya, Jonah. Yeah, they probably did threaten to fire Rubens, and at that point, okay, fire me. You know, I am sure that plenty of teams would have taken Barrichello without too much hesitation. Obviously, Williams was pretty set in their lineup at that point with Montoya and Ralf Schumacher, but I don't know if that's an interesting question. Would Barrichello have been taken up by McLaren? I know they had David Coulthard, and obviously Kimi Räikkönen was brand new to the team, but would McLaren have taken Barrichello with the prospect of getting some Ferrari data from Barrichello? I wonder. Yes, Thiago Monteiro finishing third at the 2005 United States Grand Prix. It is technically a podium finish, even though there were only 6 cars in that race. So technically, Monteiro only performed 50% as well as the race winner. Yeah, that was something to see a McLaren overtaking in a straight line in Spain. I have to say I did not expect that at all. And yes, Monteiro did beat Karthikeyan that day. Narain Karthikeyan, whatever happened to him? I don't know. Whenever he talked to the media, he always just kind of looked like, what am I doing here? He had that sort of bewildered look on his face. I don't know if it's I don't know if he honestly felt that way or whatever, but I felt that way about him. Like, what are you doing here? Oh, oh dear, the cucumber. What is that? Malaysia 2011, was it? Karthikeyan driving for HRT at the time, and Sebastian Vettel not happy with the speed with which Karthikeyan moved over to let him lap, and Sebastian Vettel he called Karthikeyan a cucumber. You know, it was good to have Pedro out there doing an interview. It's been a long time since we've seen him. I actually always rated him pretty highly, to be honest. He had been in F1 for a long time. He never really managed to break through to the top, but you know, he was a McLaren driver. You know, you can't be a slouch if you're going to be a McLaren driver. So, you know, he did some races for them in 2005. Before that he had driven for Jaguar. So Pedro de la Rosa, although not one of the quickest guys in history, and certainly not a name that we really remember often, I still regarded him pretty highly, to be honest. USF1, that was a joke from the moment it started. You know, the USF1 YouTube channel is still up, and you can go find them. USF1 is the name of the YouTube channel, and they have the saddest videos possible. They have, today we're going to make a nose cone, or today we're going to talk about I don't know, something really mundane, like a wheel nut, whatever. Basically stuff that they don't have to build or design themselves. They have videos about it, and you never actually see any part of the actual car because it doesn't exist. And it never did exist. And no, I am not lying. The USF1 YouTube channel is still there. I'm actually subscribed to it. I subscribed all the way back in 2010 when it looked like they were actually going to be there. But no. Yes. The team Hospitential. LOL. Stefan GP. Yeah, they were supposed to enter 2010 with a repossessed TF110. That was the Toyota chassis that had been pretty much completely developed and completely built up for Toyota's 2010 campaign, but it never came to be. Toyota pulled out at the end of 2009 amid the Crashgate scandal. Not the Crashgate scandal that had to do with Nelson Piquet Jr. and Renault, but the Crashgate scandal that came from what was termed in the U.S. unintended acceleration. So basically people were getting their floor mats stuck on the gas pedal in their car, and they couldn't figure out what the problem was, and they were crashing and dying. So Toyota had to pull out of Formula One to pay the lawsuits from that scandal, even though people honestly were just committing a very basic driving error and not securing their floor mats. There were a couple instances in that unintended acceleration problem of there being a computer glitch. but for the most part, it was actually traced to the gas pedal being stuck because there was some sort of object on top of it. Most cars nowadays run what's called a fly-by-wire throttle, so there's no throttle cable, it's just a potentiometer on the pedal, and then there's a solenoid on the throttle valve on the engine, the butterfly, that actually applies the throttle. It actually works in exactly the same way as the pedals on a sim rig, but there were relatively few instances of that being the cause, and for the most part it was people having something actually between their foot and the pedal. Yeah, short of getting myself a 1970s Lancia, my best insurance policy of having no problems with unintended whatevers is to drive a manual transmission. If I get a stuck throttle, I dump the clutch, and now I no longer have unintended acceleration. And then I can shut the engine down and not worry. Or conversely, if I ever have a problem starting, well, I can push it a little bit, jump in, and pop the clutch, and it starts, you know? So even if you do have to have some modern technology on it, you can still get around it with having some shift-it-yourself mechanics. Also, guys, I don't know if you've seen yet, but VRC Modding Team over on Facebook, they just posted a picture on their timeline, and I do recommend you have a look at it because it's really, really cool. I'm going to share it over to the Ferrariman601 Facebook page as well. VRC obviously hard at work on their next projects, and this is some encouraging stuff because it shows that they've got some good modeling going on already with the fine details. So that tells us that we probably do have a good model of the next car already in game by them. Yep, that is a steering wheel for the Renault R25. Obviously the 2005 Formula 1 car from Renault with which Fernando Alonso took his first driver's championship. So, yeah. VRC working hard on that. And they are also working on a McLaren MP420, also from 2005. So, at some point in Assetto Corsa, we're going to be able to race the R25 and the MP420. I don't know when all of this is going to be out. I hope that we'll get the R25 at very least within the next couple of months. But the future is bright for F1 mods in Assetto Corsa. And yeah, 2005 would have been a really great season. It already was a great season, but it would have been even better if we had the ability to change tires, because I say it would have been better because, you know, Ferrari probably would have won again. But the rules were what they were, and, well, Renault ran away with it, McLaren right behind them. The MP420 is what they are working on. They're also working on an R25. I think we're going to get the R25 first, because a couple of months ago VRC did a poll on their website, on the forum section of their website, and they asked us what cars you wanted to see next. And among the options were R25 and MP420. The R25 won that poll, and the MP420 was second best in that poll. So They're going to do both cars, but I think they're going to do the R25 first. And yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree with you now on the MP413. It was absolutely awesome, it really was an awesome car, but it just hasn't been updated, and all the changes to the physics now, it's undrivable now, unfortunately. Yeah, that MP420, it's still one of those cars that once in a while pops up in a dream. Seriously, I have dreams that feature the McLaren MP420. It's just one of those things. It's 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 like your first girlfriend, and things didn't work out, but every now and again she'll still pop into your mind for some unknown, ungodly reason. That's the MP420. It was so good. It was really so good, but it just didn't have it, unfortunately. See, here's the thing with trying to drive the MP413 now. You can get the sounds to work, provided that you have the older versions of the sound architecture files. It is just a question of dragging and dropping with a copy and paste of those old files into the current locations of the new ones. Problem is, though, if you've updated Assetto Corsa recently and you've never made a backup copy of those original sound configuration files, you can't do it. So, yeah. The MP420 didn't start the shark fin thing. The two appendages that were sticking out from the side of the airbox on the MP420, we called them the Viking horns. And if you look at the BMW F108, they ran Viking horns as well. The McLaren MP422 also ran them, and I believe the 421 ran them as well at some point. But those were just two winglets sticking out at 90 degrees from the side of the airbox. The shark fin trend started in, I believe, in testing in 2007. And then they made their way onto the race cars in 2008 at the Spanish Grand Prix. They were one of the things that were brought out in the updates for the start of the European season in Spain. And for the Spanish Grand Prix, I believe Ferrari, Renault, and Honda, I think, had shark fins in Spain that year. X-Wings! Yes, X-Wings in 1998. For those of you who don't know, they were also called Tower Wings. And what they were little flick-ups, the little turning vanes that you see on the three-quarter section of the car, the rear section of the side pods. We're used to seeing things like that, but they were those winglets, but they were raised really high. Like, I want to say a good 30% higher than the top of the car. And they were just these really gaudy, ugly things. And the idea was you could get clean air to go over them if you put them up so high, because they won't be affected as much by turbulence in the airstream behind a car in front. But they also could impair visibility. They could also break off at high speed and become a gigantic missile that somebody could run into. So they didn't last all that long. But it is one of the crazier things that F1 teams have tried to run. Related to that, though, and this continued for actually a long time, were nose winglets. I remember Jordan and Arrows ran those at Monaco in 01 and maybe 02 as well. It was just another wing section mounted on the top of the nose, so you still ran the front wing, and then you also had a secondary wing on top of the nose for more front downforce. And there were two other iterations of that happened even later on. In 1990, not 1990s, in 2006, BMW ran what were also known as tower wings. They were these two vertical winglets across the front of the cockpit that they were just standing there in the airstream. They were edge on to the airstream, and the idea was you could condition the air around the cockpit and into the air snorkel, and they were banned in practice for the French Grand Prix in 2006 on the grounds that they impaired driver visibility, which they definitely did. The other iteration, though, of dealing with that topside aero treatment on the nose section of the car, the elephant ears that we saw at the end of 2007 and most of the way through 2008, the two little winglets that sprung up from the center line of the nose, and then they fan up and outward to about a 90-degree profile across the front of the car, basically lined up with the upper suspension wishbones. They were on a lot of the 2008 cars. I remember McLaren ran them, Honda ran them, I think Force India did as well at some point. So that front-end aero treatment on the top side, that definitely continued for a long time, but those tower wings or the X-wings, they didn't last all that long. I think, though, the ultimate iteration of that front-end aero treatment, though, is the S-duct. And that's something that Ferrari came up with in 2008, and now a lot of teams all the way in 2017 are running an S-duct. So still, there is this impetus in Formula One to get that positive pressure coming onto the front section of the car from the top. You guys are all reminding me very much that I know more about Formula One obscurity than I probably should. Oh yeah, the Honda 99 project. Aha. What may we have seen? A factory Honda entry in 1999 or 2000? Yeah, that might have happened. Obviously, we had BAR running as a pseudo Honda team. They were a British team manufactured in Britain, but supplied by Honda with engines. And BAR turned into the Honda factory outfit in 2006 is when they officially became the Honda factory team. They were basically the Honda team going back really to 2004, but or even really 2003. But in 2006 they officially became Honda Racing instead of BAR Honda. But yeah, I think we might have seen that Honda factory outfit happen a little bit sooner had we not lost Harvey Posthwaite. But yeah. Well, we've seen a BAR 006 race at 2004, haven't we? And the F2004 wins. Yeah, Jenson Button took a pole position at Imola, I think it was, in 04, but, well, Jenson Button didn't win the World Championship, did he? You know, I actually liked the white livery that BAR had. It was cool. And actually, I liked the white and the red that the Hondas ran in 05 and 06. It looked like the Japanese flag, and well, Honda are a Japanese company, so it looked very Japanese. I liked it. It fit. I mean, if we had a BAR 006 in Assetto Corsa, it's definitely something that I would do. But we don't have one. I liked the 007 better. the 2005 car. It just looked a little bit nicer in terms of its proportions. I also liked the Honda RA106, the 2006 car. That was another car that looked very good. And yeah, it's a race winner as well. Jenson Button won the 2006 Hungarian Grand Prix from 14th on the grid, too. In any event, guys, it is 5 minutes past 1 in the morning here. And yeah, I do have to go to work tomorrow. Not early in the morning, which is good, but I do have an important meeting where I actually have to speak to people. So I might want to consider going to bed at some point. But it has been a lot of fun. And no, I'm not going to mention that certain car that we call RA107. Certainly not. I do need to have some dreams this evening, but they won't be about the Earth, I promise you. So, yes. However, with all of that being said, I've been streaming for 2 hours and 45 minutes. We did some running here in the FW14. I don't think we talked all that much about it, to be honest. It's 0.6 beta. It's not much different from 0.5 beta, and it's not all that much different either from 0.3 beta, but there is a bit more oversteer now at the slow speed corners, which I think is it's an artifact of that blown diffuser at the back. But yeah, that's what we've done here, and I hope you've all had some fun just talking about F1 and all of that kind of stuff, because I've had a lot of fun talking about F1 and all that kind of stuff too. But awesome, awesome. Thank you guys all very, very much, and Ferrariman601 saying we will see you soon.